Now we're going to factor where a is greater than 1. Remember, our a value is the number that's in front of the x squared. So anytime there's a number that's not 1 in front of the x squared, we're going to use this method. I call this method the x method. And that's where we're going to put our steps over here. You can use other methods. There's also a guess and check method. But the X method I have found gives you the right answer every single time, so you don't have to spend extra time guessing and checking. So here's how we're going to go through this. The first step is to draw an X. So over here, I'm going to draw a big X. Okay, I'm going to color code this so you can follow the steps. Next, I'm going to multiply A and C. So the first term and the last term, which is 30x squared. That number is going to go on the top of the X. Next step. Bring over B. Your B, your middle term, is going to go on the bottom of the X. Now, what does this tell us? That means we need to find factors of the top that add to the bottom. So factors of top that add to the bottom. All right, so factors of 30. Factors of 30. I have 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. Okay, now look at your signs. Well, my signs, oh, we forgot to bring over our sign. This 30, since it's multiplied to a negative, is a negative 30. All right, so we have a minus minus. Well, remember from yesterday, when we have a minus minus, we have opposite signs. So I have a plus and a minus. Now we're going to fill in our factors. All right, so what factors? They all multiply to 30 already, so which ones have a 1? Which ones can get us to 1 when we add and subtract? 5 and 6. If I fill that in, 5x and 6x, positive 5x times negative 6x, that gives me my negative 30x squared on top. Positive 5x plus negative 6x gives me my negative x on the bottom, so we're good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to bring that over. So my next step, I don't even know what colors I need next. Let's do this one. Is we're going to make the quadratic into 4 terms. So we're going to bring down the 2x squared. We're going to split up the middle term. We're splitting up the middle term into the 2 factors we just came up with. So plus 5x minus 6x. Then bring down your last term, minus 15. Next step, we're going to group. So here's my 2 groups, 2 in each group. And then I'm actually going to add on to that step and factor GCF. So look at each parenthesis and what do they have in common? The first parenthesis only has an x in common, so that's what I'm going to pull out. That leaves my 2x inside, and then 5x divided by x leaves me with just a 5. My second parenthesis, well, they have a negative in common. What goes into 6 and 15? 3, and they do not have an x in common, so I'm going to leave it. Negative 6 divided by negative 3 is 2. Negative 15 divided by negative 3 is positive 5. All right, last step. List the factors. List the factored form. Whoop, can't spell. Oh boy. List the factored form. So notice that the parentheses are exactly the same. As long as they come out to be exactly the same, you have it factored correctly, and that's one of your factors. 2x plus 5. Your other factor is what you pulled out, which would be x minus 3. And that right there is your answer. Let's look at the next one. All right, so this guy in light blue. So we're going to follow the same steps. All right, step 1 said draw your x. Step 2 said multiply the first and last term. Now, if you need a calculator, feel free to use a calculator. So we have 5 times 21, which is 105 x squared. It's a positive times a positive, so we're going to leave it just like that. And then my middle term comes down to the bottom. All right, we need factors of 105. 1 and 105. 2 doesn't work. 3 and 35. 4 doesn't work. 5 and 21. 6 doesn't work. If you don't know how to find these, take a calculator and do 105 divided by 6. It's a decimal, doesn't work. 105 divided by 7. That one comes out as 7 and 15. 105 divided by 8. Oh, that's a decimal. 105 divided by 9. Nope. 105 divided by 10. Nope. 105 divided by 11. Nope. 105 divided by 12. Nope. 105 divided by 13. 105 divided by 15. Well, we've already used 15, so now we're done. All right, now figure out your signs. So my signs are a minus plus, which means if we go back to our sign rules, we have a minus minus because they're multiplying to be a negative. Sorry, they're multiplying to be a positive, so the same sign, adding to be a negative, so they're both minuses. All right, which one of my factors can get me to 38? 3 and 35. So I'm going to fill those in. 3x, 35x. Negative 3 times negative 35 is 105. Negative 3x plus negative 35x is negative 38x, so we should be good to go. So now I'm going to take my first term and bring it down. I'm going to split up my middle term into the two factors I just came up with. So minus 3x minus 35x, bring down my last term. Now we do our grouping. So I'm going to group the first two together, group the second two together, and pull out my GCF. What does 5x and negative 3x have in common? Just an x. So we're left with 5x minus 3. And then in my second one, what goes into 35 and 21? 7. Now notice I need this 5x to be positive. Right now that 35 is negative, so I'm going to pull out a negative 7. What happens? Negative 35 divided by negative 7, that gave me my positive 5x. Positive 21 divided by negative 7, that gives me my minus 3. Remember, these two parentheses need to be exactly the same in order for this to be factored correctly. These two parentheses are exactly the same, so I'm going to go ahead and write that as one of my factors. And then I'm going to write what I pulled out, my GCFs, as my other factor, so x minus 7. If I multiply that out in my box method, I would end up with this original problem for number 2. All right, let's try one more together. So follow our steps. Step 1, draw your x. Step 2, multiply the first and the last term. So 8 times negative 3 is negative 24x squared. Bring your middle term down to the bottom of the x. Next step, list out the factors of the top one. So 24, we have 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6, 5 doesn't work, 6 we already used. Okay, now do your signs. We have a plus minus in our original problem, which means they're opposite signs. Okay, which one of my factors can get me to 10? I see 2. 2 and 12, and 4 and 6. Let's try them. If I do 4 and 6, what happens? 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. That's correct. But 4 plus negative 6 is not 10. So we can't use this one. So now let's try 2 and 12. 2 times negative 12 is negative 24. 2 plus negative 12 is 10. That's a positive 10 though. What do I need to fix? If I flip-flop my signs, so let's flip-flop, let's make this one a 12 and this one a 2. Positive 12 plus negative 2 is a positive 10. So now we're good. So I'm going to come over to my original problem and I'm going to bring down my first term and then split up that middle term into our factors. So we have plus 12x minus 2x, bring down that minus 3. And now we're going to group. I'm going to group the first 2 together and the second 2 together. Well, what all does 8 and 12 have in common? 4. Then we have an x squared and an x, so I can pull out an x. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Bring out an x, I have an x left. 12 divided by 4 would be 3. Bringing out an x, it's gone. Now I need a positive 2 in the parentheses. Both of these have a negative, so I'm actually going to factor out a negative 1. 2 divided by negative 2 divided by negative 1 is a positive 2. Negative 3 divided by negative 1 is a positive 3. Now my parentheses are exactly the same, which means that's one of my factors. And then what I pull out is my other factor. Now just a common question I get from people, what if I write it this way? Since these guys are the same and these guys are the same, technically those are the same answer. They're just written in different orders. Just make sure your numbers are together and your signs are correct with those numbers.